Good morning, Tampa Bay. This is John Dingfelder, and you're listening to Down and Dirty on WMNF. I've got my co-host here, Jason Marlowe. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, John. How you doing? Welcome back.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. And we've got two great guests here in the studio. But, we started this show about a year ago, and Jason, you were part of it then. We decided to call it Down and Dirty because what we try and do here week in and week out is to get down and dirty, maybe not real dirty, but get down and dig into the local issues that affect all of you. And today, I think we've done a great job of getting two guests who are really in the thick of it on local issues. First, we'll go age before beauty, Wendy. Wendy, turn your mic like
before swine.
Turn your mic like mine is. We have Wendy March, William March, who is currently writing for the Tampa Bay Times, and he's been there about 20 years. And prior to that, did several decades. That's good. Did several decades with the Tampa Tribune. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi, glad to be here.
Wendy writes about all things political. At the local, state, and national levels. I don't know if you've written international, probably have in the past, I'm sure.
Only when Alex Sink goes to Africa.
There you go. I hope you got to go with her.
No.
Jason, we also have a good friend and one of my former fellow city council members, Bill Carlson.
Morning. Thanks for inviting me.
Good morning, Bill. Bill's Tampa City Councilman. He's a year into his second term, so he's got about 5 years under his belt total. And Bill Carlson is also the president and CEO of Tucker Hall, which is, how do you describe Tucker Hall? What do you guys do?
We're a public relations firm, so we help companies, organizations communicate better.
Okay. Well, maybe you can help us communicate better.
John, do you need some assistance?
And in the city council, I followed in your first footsteps, so thank you for paving the way.
Well, I think we served well together. I think we're of the same mindset on probably almost all the issues, and I'm glad you're still there, and Lynn Hertak and some of the more progressive-minded folks. Wendy, North Carolina native.
Correct. Winston-Salem.
Yeah. What brought you down here? You couldn't handle the cigarette smoke up there in Winston-Salem?
Needed a job.
Needed a job. And was the Tribune your first job?
First job here.
Okay.
Worked at a few little papers in North Carolina.
But this was the big time, I guess, right?
Yeah, pretty much was. I ended up being national and state political reporter at a time when Florida was the center of the presidential campaign universe.
And what year?
Generally the 2000s, starting, of course, with the Gore-Bush race.
Yeah. Hanging Chads.
Butterfly ballots.
2000 must have been a heck of a time to be a reporter, especially a political reporter. Just months on end, who's going to be our president?
It was insane.
Did you go up to Tallahassee?
Yes, I did go up to Tallahassee and got into all that incredible mess up there. I have a plastic bag full of Hanging Chads in my desk drawer today.
Oh, cool.
And the crazy thing about
they were probably the critical Hanging Chads, and they're still, looking for them in your desk drawer.
They're fake Hanging Chads. But the crazy thing about it was, most reporters, political reporters, they never get to see a political candidate because the political candidate, or they don't get to see a presidential candidate because those guys don't go to places where the outcome is predetermined.
Right.
But they were all over us down here.
Oh, yeah.
I'll never forget the night before the 2000 election. My day ended at shortly after midnight because both Bush and Gore were here that night trying to get on the local media the night before the election.
I think I remember maybe seeing Gore that night because Lynn and I were deeply involved.
He got out of the lockbox. He found time. I will put it in my lockbox.
I'm going to ask what you were doing in 2000, but I think it was something about kindergarten.
I was busy being 12. I was really busy. Power Rangers were big.
Bill, Why politics, Bill? You have an amazing career in the community with Tucker Hall. I know you took over from those guys over there and ended up being president and CEO, and it's a big company, a successful company. All of a sudden, there you are 5-6 years ago running for city council.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, I've been slowly over the last 10 years handing off to Darren Richards, who's running the company more day to day now. So give him credit for doing that while I'm out playing with city council issues. I never intended to run for political office, but I just was not happy with the state of things and some of the inequities and other issues happening in Tampa. And so I thought that...
So that was sort of during the whose administration, Jason? Buckhorn administration?
Could it be?
I thought we could fix some of the problems of the past, but we could also get a better vision. The vision over the last 12 years has been about buildings, and buildings are important. Real estate is an important part of our economy, but what I'm pushing for is that we need to build our economic plan around people instead of buildings.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different mindset.
Well, you mentioned economic plans, so I guess why don't we get into one of the topics of the day? The Tampa Bay Times, Wendy's paper, published the article just the other day about the losses that have been going on. It's an exodus at T-Mob right now. Losing.
What's T-Mob, Jason?
The Tampa Municipal Office Building. For those who don't know, that's right. I know the acronym. I remember that building.
I'm going to catch you on those acronyms.
It's a terrible piece of brutalist architecture.
By the way, let me jump in real quick. If you want to join the conversation, I hope you do. The call in at 813-239-9663. Our guest today, joining Jason Marlowe and myself, is Tampa City Councilman Bill Carlson and Tampa Bay Times reporter correspondent William Wendy March. And they can answer your questions about everything local government, politics, you name it. So give us a call, 813-239-9663. You were going to ask a question, Jason.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll sort of pose this to both of you, as for both of you, the question is sort of relevant. I mean, when the city of Tampa is trying to transform Tampa's tomorrow, and it loses its number one, Nicole Travis, its number two, Elise Drumgo, its number three, Erica Moody, in economic development, loses people like C.T. Harris, their new city small business navigator, and is now on top of that losing Mrs. Henderson, who's the director of housing, all in a span of, 90 to 120 days. What does that say?
And they've only been there for a year or two.
Yeah,
that's the part that's shocking to me.
Yeah.
A lot of people in city government, they do their 10, 20, 30 years, and then they leave and nobody blinks.
And let's give credit, too, for what it's worth. Erica Moody and Nicole Travis particularly, I think, are perceived as rock stars by just about everybody who's in the know. These are people who are widely respected across political spectrum, social
spectrum. Are they the two that came over from Lakeland?
Nicole came from Lakeland, and I believe Erica came from the university area CDC. And these are people that are both highly respected. So what does it say for the future of transforming Tampa's tomorrow if we're losing good staff like that?
You know what? Let's start with Wendy. What's your perception on this? What's the journalist's perception on this?
Well, my perception on this, frankly, is how little information, how few clues there are available to the public about this situation.
Transparency or a lack thereof.
Transparency, perhaps lack thereof, but these are personnel issues that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And I should make clear, I am not a City Hall reporter. I cover the political side, not the part that goes on inside the offices.
But you still got to raise your eyebrows on this one.
Absolutely, you have to raise your eyebrows.
And Kayon Henderson was the head of affordable housing?
Yeah, she was the housing director. She had been at the city for 10 years. And I mean, these are the people where, if you want the city to be quote unquote transformed, it's not plausible without high quality staff. We need to be attracting the best and the brightest.
Wendy?
Well, so far, the heaviest losses have been in the areas of housing, economic development. Those areas have been the subject of conflicts between the city council and the staff, particularly over community redevelopment agencies, CRAs. And I'm going to let our council member here get into that in just a moment, because like I said, on this particular subject, I have no insider knowledge for you.
But nobody seems to have any insider knowledge. I mean, Bill might, but what you read in the paper is very superficial, and I don't blame Olivia George for that. They just don't nobody seems to be talking about it.
Well, nobody.
And you know what else worries me, Wendy and Bill, Jason, is weren't they all African American?
Nicole, at least no, not Erica.
Not Erica.
Everyone else.
One out of the 5 or 6 people we just mentioned.
Yes.
5 out of the 5 or 6 people we mentioned, I think, were African American.
Yes,
and that
correct.
bothers me too. It's kind of like, what does that mean, Bill?
Yeah, and if I could say, there are systemic issues throughout the city. This is gutting the entire economic development department, but we've had 8 or 10 people leave the mobility department a year ago.
Yes.
And I think 2 of them, I don't know this through the city, but through what they've said in the media, 2 of them have filed EOC complaints. And
several of them were women, and that bothers me too.
I don't know if you know this, John, but at the same time, the city attorney's office refused to support you 4 years ago. It turns out there were 4 people that quit claiming discrimination. Again, I don't know this from the city. I only know it from the outside. 2 of them filed lawsuits, and the city attorney represented the city and settled them without city council approval.
Wow.
At the same time, they wouldn't defend you.
Yeah.
And so we have the legal department, we have economic development, we have mobility department. Very high number of police and fire people are joining the DROP program to get out. We're losing huge generations of leadership, and there's an overall morale issue. Now, typically, I think in the last couple of years of an administration, people would start looking for other positions.
But I don't know that, are we in the lame duck right now? It's still 3 years away. What was that?
It was a quack.
Oh, that was the lame duck.
It was a lame duck. It was, in fact, a lame
You're
duck.
definitely lame.
Last
but go
night,
ahead.
last night I made a motion to look at, and this was a suggestion from an employee who I didn't even know, who just came up to me at an event and suggested this, but suggested that we implement better leadership training in the city so that we can get people to work together better, and so that we can help develop leaders inside who can help advance the city in the future. So I made the motion last night. Technically, by charter, that's in the mayor's purview, but I'm hopeful that the administration will work with us on it.
They might ignore you on that. Wendy insinuates that perhaps there might be some frustration from some of these staff members who have to come in front of city council, especially the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency. What's your take on that, Bill?
First of all, most of the people that are leaving have had no, this is citywide, have had no interface with city council at all.
Okay.
And so we know that the mayor's office has been pushing the narrative that these departures are somehow because of city council, as they do everything else. Individual people make the decisions on why they leave on their own. I think when Nicole Travis left, and to give the mayor credit, she hired Nicole. Nicole's a rock star. Nicole brought in the rest of the team, and they're all rock stars.
But why would Nicole leave after 2 years? It doesn't make any sense. I remember she was just coming on board when I was leaving.
I won't talk about why any. By the way, I've talked to all the people that are leaving, just about, and I've talked to people who've left, and I'm sure my colleagues have as well.
Can you give us a general statement without naming names?
But what's happening is that there's a general frustration. The reason why morale is low, there's a general frustration that the mayor has some people around her, and I won't confirm or deny names. The mayor has some people around her who like to play politics and like to start fights with council. Tampa Bay Times 2 years ago pulled public records between 2 of the mayor's advisors and found that they were briefing city council members to argue with me in council. They were doing the same thing to you. I don't know if you ever saw those text messages. And so people say, oh, there's conflict in city council, but then we have written evidence. The Times never would publish the story, but there's written evidence that they were getting involved in that. And if you look at any of the disagreements between council or council and staff, it's always because the administration is asking them to do something that they shouldn't be doing.
So you're saying the Times pulled these public records through Sunshine, and they had that kind of information, but it never came out in a story?
They never published. They wrote the story, but never published it.
Well, that's bizarre. Why would that be, Bill?
I don't know.
Wendy?
Well, keep in mind, I am a freelancer. I do a gig for the Times, a weekly column. Second, even if I were a staff member, talking about internal deliberations about what stories to publish or how a story did or didn't measure up to standards of publication.
Okay, you're not going to give us specifics, and I understand that. But just tell us generically, you've been around newspapers 50 years. Tell us generically how a decision like that is made to sort of, I won't say kill a story, but maybe I'll say kill a story.
Well, the question always in a situation like this is, do you have a gun that is smoking hotly enough to justify the implications that you're going to make, to justify the attacks on people's political character, political career, In other words, just simply, do you have the goods? It's the same kind of question that a prosecutor.
But if it's true what Bill said, which we'll assume it's true, that these documents showed that this staff, the administration, the mayor's people were trying to get council members to fight with each other, why wouldn't that be a smoking gun? Just generically, Bill.
The way Bill phrased it is one way. Now, I had not seen these records, but I do know that it's true that the Times pulled a whole lot of public records concerning relations between the administration and the council. I know they did this over a period of a good many months and looked at whether there was a publishable story there.
Yeah.
The way Bill phrased it, that they were briefing council members, that's maybe one way to phrase it. Not having seen the records myself, I'm not sure. Maybe there's another way to look at it. Maybe that's not what the Times editors saw when they looked at this. Maybe when you sat and actually wrote down in words what you had in front of you, maybe it wasn't all that concrete. That's the kind of decision that you have to make, and quite frankly, Bill says that they wrote a story and didn't publish it. I'm not 100% clear on exactly what happened. I talked some to Charlie Frago, who was the reporter involved. But one thing that I found...
Oh, yeah, and Charlie sort of left suddenly.
Yeah.
Was that around the same time?
Yes.
Wow.
At any rate...
Spooky.
One thing that I know from my experience as a reporter is that it's often hard to know exactly what you've got until you sit down and write a story out of it.
Right.
I mean, I can sit and describe to an editor the materials I have, the information I've gathered, and often the editor will say, well, write it and let's look at it.
Okay.
So if you guys email me at my city email, I'll send you the documents. You can call me and let me know what you think. But there's other examples too besides just this. This happens to be what the Times got. And the thing is, I've gone to the mayor many, many times privately and said, and the chief of staff, and I've said, please ask your people to stop. It is illegal and unethical to use city resources, city time, and city staff to get involved in politics. You cannot do that. And if the purpose of a city employee is to try to help move the city forward, we should all be focused on that. We shouldn't be getting involved in politics. And what happens is that when there's a failure somehow in the administration, what happens is there's a political lever pulled and then city council gets blamed. Instead, what should happen at this point is I think the administration should stand up and say, look, we've lost some people. We need to obviously make some changes to continue to keep good people and recruit good people. And we're committed to doing that. And ideally, she would ask us to stand next to her to do that.
Well, I mean, I want to pivot on that because, we talked about how the CRAs have been sort of a source of contention, right? Both from, I think, city council coming down and from the community coming up. Frustrations with money that's, sitting and not getting done.
For those who don't know, the acronym, the CRA is the Community Redevelopment Agency, but also, the city, basically under state law, we break up the city into these little zones: East Tampa, Channelside, downtown, West Tampa, Drew Park, etc. And they sort of become little mini governments that council actually has a lot more control over spending in those areas than council does elsewhere. And I'm sorry, I interrupted, Jason.
No, you're fine. What I was trying to say is, how concerning is it, I guess, for some of these CRAs, as John mentioned, they're time limited, right? Eventually they get sunset, and we have a state legislature and a governor, or that may not be supportive of these initiatives continuing in existence.
Kill several of them,
Channelside and downtown,
probably for good reason.
But what happened is that by law, the CRA board is city council, and the mayor is not involved in the CRA. But until we got on city council, and I'm pointing at John because without him we couldn't have done this. Until we got on city council, the CRA meetings were 30 minutes, and they would rubber stamp whatever the mayor wanted. And the CRAs were actually even paying for city staff, which they shouldn't have been doing. And mostly what they were doing is subsidizing real estate development. The community came to us and said loud and clear, that's not what we want. We want you to help make our quality of life better. We want you to help improve our economic situation. And so we said there should be an executive director that reports to us, and we should set up our own strategic plan. We did.
How's that worked out over the last 2 years?
Well, until we got Erica, Erica was fantastic. Erica was exactly what we needed. She's a superstar. And by the way,
And is she one of the ones that's leaving?
yeah.
Oh, that's
By the
awesome.
way, if I ever moved into another position, any position I'm in, I would hire Erica, Nicole, Elise, maybe Kayon. I don't know Kayon as well, but all of them are outstanding.
I work with Kayon. She's a good staffer.
Top of their game. They really know what needs to go on. But there is a struggle between, in the past, the administration controlled CRA 100%. As the CRA started to find its independence, we created our own strategic plan working with Erica, Elise, and Nicole. That is a game changer plan that will really transform our community. But now all the people to implement are gone.
Yeah. We're probably deeper in the weeds than a lot of people can handle out there in radio land. But for those of you listening, this is WMNF. The show is called Down and Dirty. Today we've got Wendy March from the Tampa Bay Times and Tampa City Councilman Bill Carlson. If you want to join the conversation, it's 813-239-9663. Or you can come in with DJ at WMNF.org. Jason Marlowe is with me today as my co-host.
Hey.
But let's look at the bigger picture. And Wendy, I'm going to toss this one back to you. Tampa is known under the charter as being a very strong mayor form of government. Okay?
Right.
And we've known it for at least the last 5 or 6 mayors, and maybe more than that, I'm not sure. We've seen it, we've felt it, we've known it. If we could jump across the bay, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm no expert on St. Petersburg, but St. Petersburg, I think, has a strong mayor form of government, but not as strong as Tampa. I always get the sense that St. Petersburg Council seems to be stronger and more vocal. Maybe that's just my perception. And then if we go over to Clearwater, our third big city in the area, Clearwater has a super strong council and a very, very weak, just sort of figurehead mayor. So, Wendy, what's your take on that in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, between those 3 cities?
Well, mayors always think that strong mayor governments are more effective and more efficient. City council members always think that strong city councils are more democratic and more representative of the actual will of the people. Somewhere in there, I guess, is a golden mean. I'm no expert on
That was very well said.
That was excellent.
Yeah, that was like, I mean,
That was
that
a
was like,
perfect way to-
I don't know if you meant that to be as beautifully poetic as it came out, but
It's poetry
be a
jam.
writer.
Poetry jam, is that it?
yeah, that was really, I mean, I couldn't more agree with
All
that
right,
sentiment.
let him,
Well, maybe
let him
we
finish. Let him
dissected it.
finish.
Maybe the Nobel Committee is listening. Anyway. But at any rate, this is the constant struggle, the constant battle. And between North Carolina and here, which, as I told you, I worked there for a while, I've covered a lot of different kinds of forms of government, and the same tensions, the same conflict always exists. Do you want a strong, decisive central figure, or do you want a deliberative council form of government? I bet you we're going to hear a strong point of view on that from the guest to my left.
What do you think, Bill?
Well, first of all, it's a misnomer. The charter does not use the word strong in it anywhere.
Of course.
It doesn't. I was on the Charter Review Commission, and I've been on City Council 5 years. What a strong mayor technically means is that the mayor is not on city council. In some places like Clearwater, I think the mayor is the chair of the city council. And so in this case,
Has a vote.
yeah, and so the mayor is a separate entity. It's just like at the state level and at the federal level. I mean, would you want at the state level for the governor to control the legislature, or at the federal level would you want the president control?
Some would argue the governor controls the legislature.
And so intentionally, there's a balance of power, and that was designed to create tension to some extent, so that we could have democracy and debate. And the problem in Tampa is that for many years we had some city attorneys who usurped the power of city council, and as we tried to get it back, partly
on behalf of the mayor.
Partly while you were there, we brought some of those powers back. So what did the administration do? They said, they said city council just wants to take powers away from the mayor. We weren't taking powers away. We were putting the city council powers back as defined in the charter. The charter has a real balance of powers. What should work also is that there should be a collegial relationship between the mayor and city council. I talked to Dick Greco about this, and he said, my door was always open. I would meet with anybody. And he said, if somebody disagreed with me, I'd pick up the phone and call them. And that hasn't been the same in the last 12, 13 years. We need it. And I've told this mayor this. I said, even if you think I'm going to vote against you, call me and give me your pitch, because I might change my mind. And guess what? I think every time she's called me, I have changed my mind out of deference. And I voted on some things I didn't 100% agree with, but I was trying to be a team player and I was trying to work with them.
Sure, but your concern is it's only a one-way street.
So what happens is when they count to 4, then they say, I don't need the other 3. Well, then that means the other 3 are gonna put out their arguments. They haven't heard your arguments, and so why would you do that? Why not try to build a collaborative environment? Because that's what the public wants. We're all representatives of the people. We're all elected by the people.
Well, speaking of elections, last year was the city council elections and the mayor elections. The mayor didn't really have an opponent or much of one that I recall.
Oh, man, come on. You're disrespecting Dr. Belinda Noah right now. Come on.
Sorry, whoever that is.
Show some respect.
Okay. But on the council side, there were several heated races, specifically Bill Carlson, who's here with us today, and Lynn Hertak. And Wendy March, Bill ended up with what, 59% in the runoff, and or was it the runoff? Or
primary.
In the primary, and Lynn Hertak, I guess, in the runoff, beat her opponent, who was the mayor's, quote, daughter-in-law. Mother-in-law, excuse me. Probably, equally significant?
Yeah,
60.
Yeah.
60%.
60% more.
Resounding victories.
So what was the community saying to the mayor, Wendy, if anything, in those results?
Well, I think what they were saying is that the mayor herself is still popular, still a good draw, a good leadership figure in their eyes, but
because she didn't get an opponent,
got no opponent. And what everyone was saying is that even though her name wasn't on the ballot, her prestige was to some extent at stake, and it was to some extent because she threw herself wholeheartedly into the 2 candidates you mentioned who lost. She threw not just herself, but a lot of her political money, a lot of the campaign money she'd built up.
And political capital, really, right?
And she supported Citro, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are two races I think we're missing here. One, she endorsed and supported Joe Citro, who finished a very distant third in a 4-person race, as he deserves. And then we also had Hoyt Prindle, who quietly got only 135 votes away from beating Mr. West Tampa himself, Charlie Miranda. I mean, like...
But you missed another race, which was Gwen Henderson.
Yeah.
Because the mayor came out big time against
That's true.
our good friend, Councilman Orlando Goods, who barely lost to Gwen Henderson.
75
Gwen
votes.
Henderson was very, very strongly supported by the mayor. So that's...
We know here's the thing. If you're mayor, and I don't know how all the other mayors have done this, but if you're mayor, you should want to get along with whoever wins. You should meet with people on both sides of who's going to run in those races. You should not try to manipulate it. In this case, this mayor and her predecessor personally recruited the guy who ran against me, and then they raised, I don't know what number Wendy will say. Our estimates are about $450,000 on top of what Blake raised himself, so about $850,000 against my $150,000.
That's the McDonald's heir, Blake Casper.
7 times what I spent, and we estimate they spent about $1 million against Lynn. Ran negative ads every single day for at least 8 to 10 days. On the last day of the election, there was a 6-page mailer. Nobody had ever seen anything that expensive before. It was just a barrage of negativity, and she personally endorsed them. And so what happens when you...
I guess at the end of the day, Bill, it was really a rebuke of the mayor, at least on the down ballot races, right?
Well, even on her race, and the deal is that she won about 80% against a write-in candidate, which is really embarrassing. But if you count undervotes, that's the people that voted for city council but didn't vote for mayor, she only got 60%. That means if there was a credible candidate, they would have beaten her.
Yeah, I think I got 1 or 2 write-in ballots, but then I found out it was my mother and wife.
But the other thing, on Friday before the election, the mayor sent out a mailer supporting my opponent. And on Monday night, my supporters sent out a text message reminding voters that the mayor endorsed my opponent. Why would they do that?
Backfire.
Because my supporters sent that out because they knew that that the public did not support the mayor, and they knew that that would hurt the votes. So even sending out, we reinforced the message that the mayor endorsed him, and that hurt him in the election.
I think one point that's worth making here is, and I did some reporting on this, it's unusual but not unheard of, not unprecedented for mayors to get involved in council races, to pick a side and to endorse.
I hadn't seen much of it over the years. What did you find, Wendy?
Well, Buckhorn endorsed Louis Vieira against a candidate who recommended that New Tampa should secede from the city. Okay, so that was an exceptional circumstance, and Bob Buckhorn told me, he said, I made it a point not to get involved, but that one crossed the line and I had to. Dick Greco, I can't remember exactly what he told me, but again, he said the same thing. He said that Bill just said. He said, you want to be friends with whoever wins.
Yeah.
And I think it's safe to say that the extent, the level of Jane Castor's involvement in these council races was unprecedented in my experience. And in addition to that, the point has to be made that she tried to hide some of that involvement by doing some of the spending through anonymous shell political committees run out of Miami.
Right.
And that, because of the way campaign finance reporting works, it was impossible for me to actually reveal that until after the election because of the campaign finance reporting deadlines.
Well, is it also a coincidence that Mayor Castor's partner is Anna Cruz, who is a political animal, former chair of the state Democratic Party? So is that a coincidence that this particular mayor might be deeper into politics than any other mayor that we can remember?
We know that some of it ran through her mother-in-law's campaign. Some of the people that were hired against me ran through them. But just to put an end on this, the night of the election, Blake Casper ran against me. He had been a friend of mine before. He called me to concede, and I said, Blake, let's have coffee so that we can make peace. And when we met, I said, look, I'm putting this behind me. You beat the crap out of me. I said, I didn't run any negative ads against you. That's my values. And I said, I'm going to put the past behind me. Let's get along going forward because that helps the community. Also, the day after the election, people asked me if the mayor had called to congratulate me, which would have been the smart thing to do after she lost the campaign against me. But she didn't. So I called her and said, congratulations, let's work together. And we put an appointment on our calendars every month from there on. In fact, we're supposed to meet next week, although I hear she's out of town. So we're meeting, but if I had run an election against somebody like that, I would for sure try to make peace with them and work with them and say, what can I do to get back on your good side? And try to be collaborative, because sometimes...
So have things gotten better since last year?
No.
I can confirm, having watched Thursday's meeting, they're not better.
Okay. If you look at conflict, like watch yesterday's meeting, in the morning we were talking about ShotSpotter. It was obvious that was...
That's a tool that the police use to identify where gunshots have been fired in
may
a
or may not have been fired.
Huh?
May or may not have been fired.
Okay,
could be a firework.
If you
could
watch
be a callback
where
fire.
city council is disagreeing with each other, it's obvious that some people have been briefed to really push hard on an issue. Later in the day, we talked about a much more expensive issue, which we disagreed on, but it was very collegial. It was almost a hug fest. We all actually like each other. Even after the meeting in the morning, when we walked into the break rooms, we all said, how cool was that we got to experiment with Robert's rules? Mm-hmm. From the outside, you might think that all don't like each other, but we actually do.
You and Councilman Vieira butted heads a few weeks ago. I think, Wendy, was that your article?
Yes, I did write something about that. I can't remember the details of what it was about.
You said it was previewing the 2027 mayoral election.
Well, it's kind of my job to make little observations like that might be completely unrealistic and off the planet somewhere.
But it might be true, too.
It might also be true. And yeah, it's Councilman Vieira has clearly sought to up his personal profile. He's writing a lot of op-ed pieces, for example, in local papers, including the Times. And people speculate that that's part of the early stages of a look at the mayor's race. He doesn't deny that he might be interested, but basically he says that there are lots of reasons to do this other than because you're running for mayor. So,
Sure. That's your segue, Bill, to Wendy, to ask Bill, who's sitting 6 feet away from you, what he's going to do in 2027. Go for it.
Well, I've asked him when he was even, when he was on the phone. I've asked him when in person, 2 or 3 feet away, standing.
Well, now you can do it in front of millions of listeners.
All right. Councilman Carlson, how would you like to right now tell us, are you a candidate for mayor in 2027, which we should point out is 3 years away?
Just a blink of the eye.
What kind of answer could he give?
Bill?
Yeah, I think if anybody filed now, it would seem too early and it would seem maybe desperate. I think most people file somewhere around 18 months before an election, maybe a year out. So probably next year, everyone will declare. I don't think you're allowed to say you're a candidate unless you are a candidate. I haven't registered or filed for anything. Of course, I have people come up to me everywhere asking me to do that. And just like with some of my colleagues, they use the title already and throw it out there. But I think Wendy can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think since it's an open field, there probably will be maybe 10 people running. And so it'll be an interesting primary to see what shakes out.
Well,
some of the other names that have
that's not the best dodge I've ever heard, but I guess it will work.
When you're 6'4", it's really hard to duck.
But
some of the other names that have been bouncing around, Wendy, excuse me, is
a boatload of names
Bob
have been
Buckhorn.
bouncing around. The two most often speculated on are Councilman Carlson and Bob Buckhorn.
For return performance.
Right. And they are known to be political enemies, and it's by and large thought that if either of them runs, the other will get in the race just to oppose him.
Oh my God!
Okay,
a spite race.
It's either Return of the Jedi or Revenge of the Sith.
That's my speculation. Okay, but in any case, I mean, there are the names out there. We just mentioned Councilman Vieira. If you want to go down the list, and a number of these people have since done things that make it unlikely, but there's County Commissioner Harry Cohen. There's outgoing county...
Harry has run before.
There's outgoing County Commissioner Pat Kemp.
Who's running for Congress.
She has just filed to run for Congress. I would have to note that running for Congress, if she doesn't win, doesn't preclude her from running for mayor later on. There's property appraiser Bob Henriquez, who just sort of quashed the speculation by running for re-election. There's former state representative Sean Shaw, who's now running for county commissioner, so that tamps down the speculation on him.
Alan Clendenin?
You could kind of go on and on and on, and then there's always the Blake Casper style candidate, the businessman who has not previously been involved in politics, or the Jane Castor style candidate, the person who's been involved in public life but hasn't been electorally involved, hasn't been involved in running for anything.
We haven't seen one of those businessman types be elected mayor right out of the bag like that. Probably since Mayor Bill Poe, which has been quite a while.
Yeah, before my time in Tampa.
Really?
But you're correct. But it can always happen, and I think Blake Casper, even though he didn't win, showed that you can do that. You can sort of come out of the business world, having been involved perhaps in civic and community activities, but never been involved in politics.
Did we mention a woman's name in that entire list?
Yes, Pat Kemp.
Oh, Pat Kemp, excuse me.
But
also
again,
Lynn Hertag, I guess people...
Right, Lynn Hertag, Councilwoman Hertag.
Mm-hmm.
Did I leave her off? She was in the story I wrote.
Okay.
If I left her off the list. My own personal speculation, Councilwoman Hertag and Councilman Carlson are known to be political allies. It seems unlikely to me that they would run against each other. We might have a horse's mouth comment from my left on that, but that's what I would think.
Yeah, I think there will be a crowded field, and we saw what happened in the last two times that there was a crowded field. Is that there's a early shaking out, and then eventually it's whittled down.
What was interesting, Bill, and I know you were around for it. I don't know how involved you were, but was when Buckhorn first got elected the first time. Can't remember the year exactly.
11.
Huh?
11.
Thank you. Was that they did have a large field. It got winnowed down to Bob Buckhorn and to Rose Ferlita, who had served on county commission, and I had served with on city council. Rose had actually won, came out first on the initial primary, and then Buckhorn came around in the runoff and just cleaned her clock. I thought that was extremely interesting.
We
remember that, Wendy?
We also learned in that election, think about it, if you look at it objectively, there was a city council member who ran for a couple of offices and lost, and then beat a former mayor, former city council chair, and former county commissioner, others. And it just shows if you run the right campaign, you can win. But the other thing it showed is that Tampa doesn't like retreads. And that's all the feedback in the community right now. I think everybody is looking for a new vision for Tampa. We can't, what's happened is as we measure success in Tampa, we've always measured it by the pretty new buildings going up. And the people of Tampa are saying, why is my sidewalk broken? Why are my potholes there? Why is a park my kids play at broken? Why is it that I can't earn more money? Why can't I afford rent? And so with the team that was in economic development, we created a new economic development plan that was going to completely transform Tampa. And I'm really sad that they're gone. And I hope since the
plan will live on.
Since the mayor hired them, I hope the mayor hires equally talented, enlightened people, because they realize that we can't do things the way we did 20 years ago. Tampa was subsidizing call centers, which we never should have done. 5-6 years ago, we were subsidizing buildings. Right now, we need to focus on how do we promote and build wealth in the community so that people can rent and buy space.
And if you're interested in learning more about Tampa's economy, you can go to tampascorecard.com,
which Jason helped me with.
And all right, I don't want to get into the scorecard too much, but it is very interesting. I was looking at it last night. But the two things that I pulled out of Bill Carlson's Tampa scorecard, and Jason helped develop that, I know, was the tremendous disparity between minority income, I assume African-American income. It looked like it was $30,000 difference a few years ago between the average white earner and the average black earner, $30,000 per person difference. And also the other thing was $10,000 difference between a man and a woman earning in this city.
Over the last 20 years, because of the politics in Tampa, I've spent a lot of time in St. Pete. I helped found the EDC in St. Pete.
Do they have disparity over there?
They have disparities, but they're about half as much as ours because they've intentionally worked on it. And we've got to change the way we address these things. We can't just build up downtown and ignore the rest of the city.
All right. Speaking of St. Pete, we've been very myopic on Tampa this last 45 minutes, and we've only got about 10 more minutes. If you want to call in, 239-9663, 813-239-9663. Wendy, St. Pete City Council, St. Pete City decided to switch their elections from special elections in whatever March to November. So they're going to be on the ballot with the president, I assume, and they've got a race over there. Deborah Fig Sanders versus Tori Jasuwan. I think you might have written something about that. What's going on in St. Petersburg with that election?
Well, that's a pretty competitive race. Most people would give Fig Sanders the edge.
She is the incumbent.
She is the incumbent. There's also a very tough race in District 3 with several prominent candidates.
Is that an incumbency as well, or
no? It's open.
Okay,
it's open. It has not been easy to get the candidates in these races to take stands on the Rays deal, which is obviously the biggest issue in City Hall right now. Partly because they have a quick, easy out of an answer that will all be decided by the time of the election. So I don't have to take a position on it. But Fig Sanders has, as the incumbent, has had to act on the Rays deal and has lined up roughly initially, at least, preliminarily in favor of it, but the deliberations on that are still going on, and she's got at least one more vote to take on.
Is her fundraising obviously connected to her support of the raise?
I have not been able to come to a conclusion on that.
That'd be interesting to follow as the race continues.
Yes, and that's something I haven't researched. It's possibly a good subject for a columm. Thank you for mentioning
glad to
that.
help.
I'll check it out.
Look at you.
And who's this opponent? Jaswan, Tori Jaswan. Is that a man or a woman?
That's a woman, Tori Jaswan, and I think that rather than political issues, a fair amount of this race is personal. It's the people's opinions of the personal interactions, the personalities of the two candidates. Fig Sanders has been criticized for her responses to the public in meetings. Jaswan emphasizes that.
Some people say this could be a racial battle. Fig Sanders, I think, being African American, Jaswan being white.
Yes, and the district, I think, is fairly heavily minority, but not decisively minority.
Mm-hmm. So, Jason, you had a question in regard to the expansion of 275.
Yeah,
What's going on there?
So, for those who aren't aware, Commissioner Joshua Wostel got into the car from Monopoly, which he drives around.
Hillsborough County Commissioner.
Yeah, he's about 4 inches tall. And he decided to make a vote on the TPO the other day, basically out of nowhere, surprise out of left field, to discuss expanding 275 in between Bush and Hillsborough Boulevard, which would, we're talking literally potentially the demolishing of homes, the expansion of the highway into a way that could genuinely impact actual citizens and homeowners. And the scary...
Because 275 is being expanded right now from Malfunction Junction north to, what is it, MLK, there about Hillsborough?
And now they want to, extend that all the way up to Bush.
And that's what the DOT wants, I assume.
And the thing about this that makes it kind of, I would say, shady or sketchy is it was an 8-7 vote. Only one person who voted yay on this actually is accountable to the citizens of the city of Tampa. It was the mayor of Temple Terrace, the mayor of Plant City, representatives from the airport, et cetera, the highway express. Exactly. Yeah. So only one of these people, Commissioner Wostel, was accountable to the voters of the citizens of Tampa, and he's expanding the highway directly into their neighborhoods.
Now, he's a county-wide commissioner, correct?
Yes, he is a county-wide troglodyte.
Recently beat who?
Unfortunately, Commissioner Overman.
Okay. So he's feeling his oats, feeling very strong and powerful.
Oh, yes, strong enough, apparently, to think it's his right to attempt to primary Commissioner Hagan, which, that takes some interesting cojones to think you're going to unseat an institution such as Commissioner Hagan.
Wow. Bill, you're not on the TPO, I don't think.
He spared himself that for years.
No, I'm not on the TPO. And, I am friends with a lot of the people there in Sunshine Citizens. And I talked to, not lately, but talked to Rick Fernandez and others extensively about this. There's concern about if the road widens too much, that it will rip through historic neighborhoods and tear away the fabric even more than it was before. And so I think we have to be sensitive to that, just like we have to do with the I-4 part. At the same time, people have to be able to get in and out, and that's why we have to look at more robust transit options, but we need to run campaigns that win.
I have mixed feelings about these walls. On the one hand, so they put up these big, 20-foot walls, on the interstate.
And I love it.
And
I love it.
I hear you. On the one hand, they protect the neighborhoods that are immediately adjacent from the noise and the whatever else, pollution and that sort of thing. And you can pretend that you're not near the interstate, and that's good. But the flip side is if you're a tourist driving into Tampa or Orlando or anywhere else, you don't really get to see the city that you're coming to. And I think you lose a little bit in that regard.
I think it's horrendously ugly. You're driving down the concrete ditch.
So I agree. I agree wholeheartedly in this. I agree. I think you really do need to beautify those spaces. I think leaving them is
just painting on the walls or carving manatees doesn't really cut it.
It's better than looking like we're driving through like East Berlin or something. Like it's not great. I agree with you. But I'll say, as someone who resides directly adjacent to 275, I can personally attest to like the noise levels are reduced. I feel like I do have an improved quality of life because of that. And I mean, I support it wholeheartedly. The thing that I find funny about the expansion is like, come on, man, like when are we going to get off of this idea that just adding one more lane is going to somehow solve the problem, as opposed to finding some means to actually get commuter transit from one part of the county or one part of the city to the other. Adding one more lane is like, it's like telling, it's like telling your gut, like I'll have one less burger and suddenly I'll drop a pant size.
Well, it's two more lanes, right? One each direction.
Yeah.
All right. So here's something funny. As we were talking about mayoral candidates, Wendy, you mentioned Harry Cohn as a possibility. Who just walked in the studio next door is potential candidate Harry Cohn for he's giving me a funny look. All right, if you want to hear more from Harry Cohn, tune into The Skinny on the next hour of WMNF. It looks like Harry, Mitch, Ray are going to have a great conversation. And Mitch, I'm counting on you. You got to pin him down if he's going to run for mayor again.
Because he's not having enough fun on the county commission. I think what he really needs is to find ways to make himself more miserable. I think we can dig deep. We can dig deep and we can find a way if we work hard.
Harry Cohn had the best commercial
yes,
in the last mayor's race.
Unequivocally.
With the elevator. That was beautiful, Harry.
It was great.
All right. So what do we want to wrap up with, Jason, here? I know. Amendment 3 and Amendment 4.
Yeah, let's quickly get into that.
Amendment 3 and Amendment 4. Amendment 3 is going to be on the statewide ballot for marijuana, legalizing marijuana recreationally in the state of Florida. Amendment 4 is basically the abortion amendment to take us back to Roe v. Wade. I'll just kind of synopsize that. William, Wendy, March, what do you think the impacts of those two amendments are going to be in November on the any local elections, state elections, or, of course, most importantly, perhaps presidential election?
Well, if I were a Democrat, I wouldn't get too ecstatic about the effect on turnout. Politico did at least one analysis of votes where abortion reproductive rights amendments passed, and they found that there was a fair amount of what you might call ticket splitting. People would go to the polls and vote in favor of the reproductive rights amendment, but then also vote Republican.
Wow.
I would also say that the abortion amendment in particular is likely to generate as much heat and enthusiasm on the opposite side as it does on the pro side. The marijuana thing may be a little different. If it draws out a lot of young voters, then we might see, depending on how the young voters go. But young voters...
Well, the question is, how many Jasons are there in this state?
Only one.
The young voters are not as uniformly Democratic as they have been in past elections, is my experience. So it could...
Democratic as in Democrats.
Yeah, as in Democrats. So I'm not clear that that these amendments are going to really help a lot. Likely will help some.
Bill, you got any thoughts on that?
I think the secret to the campaign in the fall is going to be grassroots. And, there's some disagreement in the Democratic Party right now. Hopefully the party unites quickly and organizes grassroots, because that's the power of the Democratic Party.
It's going to be a turnout race.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're wrapping up here. Bill Carlson, Tampa City Council member. Keep up the good work. We're glad to have you here. Wendy, an illustrious career. You were called recently the Dean of Political Reporting for the Bay Area.
That means oldest.
But we appreciate you coming in. Jason Marlowe, any final words of wisdom from you?
No, I mean, love being here. And, when we play out, we're going to do a little tribute to the late, great Donald Sutherland. So thank you for years and years and years of excellent, excellent films and television, buddy.
Yeah, Donald Sutherland, Clute, et cetera, et cetera. But all right, let's do it.